Logging, fire and macropods, a less than simple dichotomy. The following survey was conducted in the Helidon Hills region, adjacent to the Lockyer Valley National Park. 6 survey sites with various rates of fire and logging were used to assess if any relationships existed between macropods, fire and logging. The current literature states that fire has very little impact on macropod abundance. However, there is a positive relationship between areas of logging and the number of macropods. All 6 study sites were within close proximity and had similar habitat and vegetation types, the primary difference between these being the rates of fire and logging. 4 species of macropod were identified during this survey, with swamp wallabies being the most common at 74% of sightings. The aim of this study was to determine whether any statistically significant relationships existed between the abundance of macropods and rates of fire and logging at different sites. Data was collected with infrared and white flash camera traps, as well as soil plots located along transects at each site. All data was collated and standardized to give a number of events per 100 trapping nights. No statistically significant results were found for soil plot data or between macropods and fire. However, there was a positive relationship with a statistical significance of p equals 0.037 between macropod abundance and sites that had been logged. Figure 1 gives a visual representation of number of events per 100 nights in comparison to the logging and fire status of each property. Now, there's a significantly higher number of events at Site 4, however this may have been an anomaly. There's also a significantly higher number of events for soil plot data than there was for camera trap data. While the soil plot data was not statistically significant, it was important because it showed presence of macropods at 5 out of the 6 study locations. The primary difference between soil plots and camera traps is that soil plots are built along established dirt roads, while the camera traps are placed away from the roads. This showed that the presence of macropods wasn't actually determined by logging, but their ability to utilize the habitat was. Sites that have been logged allowed macropods to move through the habitat more freely, whereas sites without logging, macropods were forced to move along roads and corridors in order to move through the habitat and forage. While this appears to be high presence of macropods at sites that are logged, it's really just a utilization of space rather than actual abundance. It can be said that there would be different relationships for different species of macropods and different types of habitat, such as rainforest species or smaller macropods that don't require such open areas to move. In conclusion, it could be seen that logging has little negative impact on macropods, as they are often seen in higher abundance in areas that have been logged. However, it's much more likely that they're simply utilizing these spaces differently. More specific studies could be done to look at how macropods are using these areas, whether or not they're simply moving through them, and then still going to the more dense areas to feed and perform social behaviours.